Hi, my name is Tiffany Bova. I'm the Global Growth and Innovation Evangelist at Salesforce. The importance of having accurate data in your CRM system, especially when it's pre-populated and there's direct integration between something like Sales Navigator and Salesforce, is a game changer. Because at the end of the day, we want salespeople to spend their time with customers, not weeding through data or trying to find the most relevant and recent sets of information about customers. So the more informed the seller can be, the greater experience they can give the customer, right? They show up with the relevant information. They know that they're now employed here versus there. They know their title, right? It makes it seem like they know you. Right? And that is what is the most important. How do you create those connections with customers? And it has to start with data. And if you're spending all your time hunting and pecking for the latest, it's just a waste of your time. You want to make sure you're spending the majority of your time with customers and selling. The pandemic totally changed the selling motions for companies around the globe. Whether you're B2B, B2C, consumer, direct to consumer, it doesn't matter. What has changed the most, really, is the customer. Which means if you are a chief revenue officer or a VP of sales, it's really important to start from the outside in. Look to optimize the processes you have in place. Look to optimize the technology stacks you've already acquired. Where are there gaps in what you're doing today and how can you fill those in? But always make sure you're making those decisions from two sides of the same coin. One is what do customers need from you? Right? That data integration, personalization, real time, all those buzzwords is important, but you also want to make sure you're setting your sellers up for success. So do they have everything they need? Do they have just-in-time coaching? Do they have information at their fingertips? Can they get to what they need quickly, or are they spending a majority of their time on non-selling activities? We actually found 66% of a seller's time is spent on non-selling activities. So as a leader, what's most important is driving down that non-selling time, increasing the time in which your sellers are spending with customers. But when you're making decisions about changing, revamping, transforming your sales organization, always start with the customer and with your sales reps. The tech stack is really critical to success going forward. Look, there is no shortage of technology. You literally can split the hair of a buyer journey in a sales process and find technology that can solve and assist in each of those steps. But is that really necessary? What's most important is making sure that the people are organized properly and the processes support what you need your people to do at those moments that matter when you are engaging with a customer. So tech for tech's sake is not a great strategy. You want to make sure that the tech and the human are enabled to be successful, and that is where I think sales can win, is if you are in a selling organization that uses technology better than your competition, you're going to have a great shot at winning those deals. When you do show up with that value-based information, right? It's personalized, it's real time, it's just in time. It has all the information that the customer is looking for from you. That separates you from the rest, because if you show up and you're ill-prepared, you're just not going to get that second meeting. So technology is there to support processes, support your sellers in delivering those compelling and meaningful experiences. But it can't just replace, especially if you're in a complex B2B selling organization. It's always going to be tech and human. It's never going to be tech alone, and it will rarely be human alone. And now with this hybrid virtual sort of selling that is, when do you sell in person? When do you sell virtually? Is it virtual first? Is it in person first? Like, all those decisions have to be made. And once you make those decisions, you can determine what technology is the best to support those motions you want to put forward for your sellers as well as your customers. If we've learned anything over the last 2 years, is the fact that buyers' expectations have increased, which means sales has to keep up. And the gap between those two things, unfortunately, has gotten a little wider. It doesn't mean as sellers we can't catch up and we can't make up some of the things that have gotten us a little disconnected from our customers, but it requires focus. So a lot of that has come, especially in the B2B world, is these consumer expectations have bled into the B2B environment, meaning I want real time, I want app first, I want digital first, right? I want you to know who I am. All those kinds of consumer-like feel skill, especially when it comes to technology, now is expected in B2B. Remember, on the other end of any B2B buy is a consumer, right? Is a customer, is somebody who has expectations that have been generated in their personal life, and now they have those expectations in their business life. And when you have the B2B environment that is mostly team buying, that means that each of those buyers individually have their own expectations. So it's gets even more complex, right? It's compounded by the fact that it isn't just one buyer anymore, that these buying teams have made it even far more complicated for sellers as they look to try to bridge that divide between what customer expectations are and what the sales organizations are able to deliver. I think one of the most important things a salesperson has to do is to be able to adjust in situations. If you have a buying team, it's a very different personality than you would bring to an individual buyer. If it is a highly regulated industry, you better show up knowing your stuff. So I like the Hulk, right? I like the Hulk as being the superhero that would be the best salesperson because, very calm, cool, and collected, and you don't expect that when needed, right, the Hulk can show up and save the day. So I think that there is a balance between a seller. I don't think you should always show up as the Hulk, and then I don't think you should always show up, just letting people do what they want to do. You have to make sure that you are able to adjust yourself. Now, I don't want you to not be who you are, but I do want you to be very aware of the audience and what the current situation requires from you, and then that's what you need to bring forward. So I think one of the things that was a positive outcome through the pandemic for the selling profession was this focus on having leaders keep an eye on burnout. I think it is a topic in sales that just didn't get talked about. Listen, at the end of the day, companies do two things. They make stuff and they sell stuff. And revenue falls on the shoulders of salespeople. I mean, who else works 24 hours a day, literally? If your customer, I'll just date myself, right, pages you on a Saturday at 10 o'clock at night, you're gonna answer. If they send you an email on a Sunday at your family dinner and it's a deal you're trying to close and it's end of quarter, guess what? You're going to get up and you're gonna go close that deal. So the conversation around, let's put some boundaries around what do managers expect their people to do? Is it really 24/7, always on? Giving people the time and space to, recover, and then also really paying attention to what are mental health and well-being things that as teams you can do and as leaders you can do to make sure your people have all that they need to show up with their best selves. And I don't think, and I can say as a former sales leader, I always ask the question, would I be a better leader today than I was, 15 years ago when I was actually leading people? And I would hope to say that I would be. But I was burnt out. I was burning out my team. It was 24/7. Our team meetings were on Saturdays. It was just a brutal environment, and we were just trying to grow and really disrupt the market. And I can say that, would I do it the same way now? I hope not. And I think that the last 2 years have really showed us that we have to pay attention to the needs of our people on the mental side and the well-being side. And I think that that was a positive for me coming out of the pandemic. I often get the question about how do you create more top performers? And I think that's a misnomer, right? Top performers are decided upon in various ways. It could be always hitting quota, blowing out quota, coming close to quota, right? It could be that they just are really consistent in the behaviors. And while they may only hit 80% of quota or 85% of quota, their customers are really happy, their customers are growing, right? The net promoter scores, right, or customer satisfaction scores are higher. And so ask yourself, if you have a club, right, or a winner's circle for your top performers, and let's say, somebody else hits $1 million and I hit $750,000, and the $1 million sales rep goes to club. I don't get to go to club because I didn't cross that $1 million threshold. But 6 months later, that $1 million is now $750,000, and the $750,000 is now $1.3 million. Who should have gone to club? And so you want to always make sure that you're balancing not just quota performance, but how is the health of the business? Is the sales rep selling something the customer just doesn't need to achieve quota, right? Or are they really doing what's right for the customer and setting everybody up for success? And so those kinds of metrics, right? The kinds of things that you would look to determine who was a top performer, not a top performer, can't just be wrapped around the quota, because you will miss the opportunity to find those that are really strong in certain areas, and how can you help them get to that quota attainment using all the things that they do so well. Maybe they're really good at long-term relationships and upselling and cross-selling. So do you move them from being a hunter to being a farmer, right? Move them into a customer success organization. Take those that are really good on closing those deals and achieving, getting those net new logos, and have them focus there. And so that's where I think as leaders, we have to make sure that we look to the individual strengths of all of our sellers and our people beyond just quota attainment, because you might find some diamonds in that rough. So when you're thinking about reorganizing your sales organization, the question is, do you have someone sort of close business once and move on, or do you have them close that business and then manage that relationship over the long term? The challenge with that dual strategy is, as a seller, I know what I'm better at. Am I better at closing net new business, or am I better at upselling and cross-selling? And in order to achieve quota, I'm going to focus where I have the greatest likelihood to achieve that quota and close that business. So if I'm really good at net new logos and I'm not so good at upsell and cross-sell, that's where my time is going to go. If I'm really good at upsell and cross-sell and I'm not really good at net new logos, that's where I'm going to go. Then what happens is you have customers who aren't paid attention to by those that are really good at getting net new logos, and then you have sales reps who are really good at upselling and cross-selling that aren't getting net new logos. And so that's kind of the beginning of where sales teams started to bifurcate, right? You'd have the hunters and the farmers. And if you try to mix those two roles, sometimes they will make the decision of where they're going to go and achieve that. So I always caution you, do you have it one person or two people? I think sometimes you could say, let's put some quota around each of those activities. So 30% of your revenue has to come from upsell, cross-sell, and 70% has to come from net new logo. Some kind of way to get them to focus their attention. Maybe it's an accelerator on upsell, cross-sell. Maybe it is an accelerator on net new. And you can change them often enough so that you can make sure you're achieving your long-term growth goals as a leader and as an organization. But to just make a blanket statement that everyone actually can do both and do them both well is a mistake, full stop. Having more insights, deep insights, more information, more facts, more research before you show up in a customer is a good thing. Can you do it in smaller bites? Can you do it in a more automated way? Can you do it in a easier way, right, with more scale and less friction? I used to have to do it in magazines and newspapers and go to trade shows, and now we can do it in 5 minutes, what might have taken me hours to do. So I would say always spend time, block time on your calendar, actually do that research before a call. And after a call, making sure that you fill in that data you've now achieved from that conversation. So when you go back to that a week or two later, you've got this really good picture holistically of the data you've captured from something like Sales Navigator into your CRM system like Salesforce, and now you're going to show up with the power of those two things. If you don't have those deep insights and you just show up with maybe what you had in your CRM system and it's not up to date, the customer will sniff that out in a hot second, right? They're like, don't you know who I am? Like, I've been your client for 2 years. Like, I was a customer at another company. I just joined this one. Did you not remember that I was at some other company? And as a salesperson, there's just no recovering from showing up and not knowing who your customers are, whether that be via video, via a text, an email, or even connecting on LinkedIn. I often get sales LinkedIn in-mail messages, and they're totally off base. Like, someone didn't spend 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 1 minute on my profile to know I'm probably not the right target for buying leads, right? Or I'm maybe not the right target to try their startup CRM system or something like that. And it's really a fail. And it's so hard to come back from something like that. So those deep insights and that sort of integration between your CRM and a source like LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great way to set you up for success. The next step for the tech stack when it comes to sales and marketing and customer success or customer service is data interoperability. Sharing data across various parts of the organization. The disconnection in data results in a disconnection in the experience for the customer. So there is no question that having that single source of truth, right, having all that information seamlessly flow between data sources is all about making sure that when you have that opportunity as a field service representative, as a sales rep, as a customer service agent, as a product manager, whomever you may be, at the end of the day, having the right information at your fingertips is critical. So if you can optimize that stack, ensure you're sharing data across platforms and across groups. Set up ways in which the teams can collaborate and build those bridges between those silos. I don't think you'll ever break them down, but build the bridges so that you're all on the same page when it comes to the customer. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? Making sure that you show up for that customer so they not only buy from you once, but they buy from you again, and then they tell that story to their friends and so on, right? But if you don't show up with that information, it will forever change the way in which you have the ability to achieve quota, right, and grow your business. So I'd say data interoperability, sharing across platforms, making sure you have real-time, personalized, and scalable information is really critical to long-term success.